So hopefully in other parts of the module, you've heard the message that equity is about more than access, and that's certainly true. But I'd like to share something sort of different and that maybe you don't think about when you think about equity. And that's, what does equity mean for your majority white students? So to really have equitable outcomes, we need to think not just about access and not even just about outcomes, but what does it mean to teach in an equitable way? So sometimes, or I have campuses who say, but we're 97% white. And what does this mean for us? So we don't always think of equity in this way, but I would encourage us to think of equity as also teaching all students, including majority students, about how to wrestle with uncomfortable conversations and how to think about difference. So it's not about teaching people to change their minds or even a specific body of knowledge, but rather, how do you approach difference? How do you think about difference? How do you converse with someone from a different background from you? So when campuses are majority white, students may never have encountered someone who is different from them. So how do we teach them to be in the world that is very diverse? How do we teach them to acknowledge difference? How do we teach them to engage with difference, not as other? And part of this is exposure. When we know someone as a person, we don't see them as other. When we engage with ideas and wrestle with them, our minds expand. And this is what college is supposed to be about. But if some students only have access to a narrow education, where they never have to wrestle with questions of difference, where in fact they are never uncomfortable, I would argue that that is not an equitable education. Because part of higher education is learning to struggle with difference. It is learning to question your own beliefs, whether or not you change them or not. It is learning to ask hard questions and know how to answer them. And so if we are not teaching all students how to do those things, we are in fact failing students, whether they are white, whether they are students of color, whether they are first generation. But rarely do we hear those questions when we talk about equity. And I think it's because often there isn't leadership support for what may be very difficult pedagogical challenges. And I would just really encourage us to push into the, maybe uncomfortable and sticky work. What's happening in that classroom? What questions are being asked? What books are being taught? When something uncomfortable arises on your campus, how is that being treated? And often it's, this is thought of more as diversity. But I think sometimes that's become a checkbox. Well, we have a diversity requirement, right? Students can choose from a list of courses that exposes them to different ideas, but that's become a bit rote. And I think these are much more nuanced, complicated, incredibly difficult ideas. And if we don't start thinking about what they mean and how all students have an equitable education, we are not teaching all students, students of color, but also our majority students in an equitable manner.